And I'm going to shift this down to here. So here we go. This is the roadmap for attorneys who are referring clients to listing agents in California. Now, this probably works for many other states, but I'm licensed as a broker and attorney in California. So here it is. This is sort of what I made. Like, if an attorney wants me to coach them, whether it's because they've referred the file to me or they've talked to me and they say, yeah, I'd like coaching before I start making that $6,000 to $10,000 on every file. This is what I put together as a program. And because I've been doing lives today on it, I was like, I really should just give people an overview. So this is my thoughts. It's hard to structure everything, but I think this is pretty close to ideal to the concept that the changes in buyer agent compensations have caused. So in this first section, this is the attorney mandate. This is because buyer agent compensation is no longer the listing agents to share, and because they have no forms, they're not authorized in writing, they're not authorized to represent a seller in the negotiations of a third-party contract. And remember, even the clause, even if you were to say, but the contract makes it the listing agent's business, well, it's a third-party beneficiary clause in a contract. In a contract that I don't even know if that clause should be there, but certainly that clause, if a listing agent were passively to let the seller sell the home without speaking to an attorney, that would be a breach of their fiduciary duty. If they were to claim that they sell homes for top dollar, but they can't properly bifurcate the negotiations into the price and terms of the home, which would bring the buyer and the seller together, and then negotiate the buyer agent compensation separately and mitigate the risks. Like, the more you're paying, the more risk you should mitigate, up to like 100% of the risk. If they can't do that, they're really not selling homes for top dollar. Because if you bifurcate, you're either going to sell the home for a higher price, or you're going to be able to negotiate buyer agent compensation down in the vast majority of files. Also, they certainly are not able to leverage buyer agent compensation properly anymore by broadcasting it, making unilateral offers, which would mitigate against the risks from protected groups for suing for discrimination, and leveraging buyer agent compensation also allowed realtors to develop more showings and more offers for clients, especially when they put it into part of a 7-day process, or whatever the processes were. That's what I call it, a 7-day process, where you do the marketing, you have all the buyers come together into that first Saturday, and then you talk to the buyers that are interested about making offers, and you have the buyers compete against each other. Now, it could take more than 7 days, it could take less, but that's the point. Realtors can't leverage buyer agent compensation and get everyone there saying, we cooperate with buyers, we love buyer agent compensations. Reload buyers, bring your buyers. Relocation agents, bring your buyers. They can't do that. So anyway, it all works together seamlessly. I've done it, and this was me trying to explain how we can approach it, so that rather than me, like, for instance, none of this is new. I counsel sellers on this. I've sold over 200 homes as a broker. This is just counseling the seller on the new reality, and I've already done that. Now, I think an attorney who wants to help their client and make $10,000 or more on a file, what they could do is work with me. I'd counsel the attorney, then the attorney would counsel the seller. The attorney would help mitigate the risks, help draft the forms, I'll counsel the seller, and they're going to earn that work. It's not going to be a RESPA kickback violation. It's going to be an attorney earning the work. And then even in Section 9, I'll talk about a backup. Like, I think all attorneys should be getting paid out of the listing agent's fees. This doesn't need to be extra money for your seller. It should be out of the listing agent fees. There's ways to accomplish it. There's affiliated business arrangements, not necessarily businesses, but arrangements. I get disclosures with the seller. But in the end, I do it and I'd set it up so that I would expect to get paid out of escrow, out of the listing agent's commissions. But there's also always a chance the lender will balk if it's out of an ordinary, like $2,000 they're used to paying, or back in the short sale days, a little bit more. But if it's more than they feel comfortable with, they might balk. An attorney needs another way to get paid for sure. And that would be part of getting paid your money. There's also, for attorneys that I was working with, I would share another way for attorneys to get at least 50% of the transaction, of the listing agent fees on every transaction. Like, if you're doing this frequently, you're passing up big money. You don't even need a broker's license if you work with a broker and attorney who knows how to set this up for you and protect you along the way. And technically, you wouldn't even have to do the work. I would set up the structure so that there was money going to the attorney doing the work on the file, so it really, looked like a great structure, but it can be done. So like that's one of the things we talk about. But now, so that's the attorney mandate. They're absolutely necessary to protect clients and help them sell for more on every file. And if you are actually bringing in this is where we talk about the 4 risks: steering, compromising the fiduciary duty of the buyer's agent. The forms themselves are still causing prices to be high and buyer agent compensation to be high, and how to mitigate those risks properly. And then there's also the 4th risk that was talked about when realtors and everyone was saying, don't change these rules, because if we can't offer buyer agent compensation in a broadcast in a unilateral manner, we're going to get sued by protected interest groups. So we've got to cover all that in our process. You've got to explain all this. This is what a certified seller. As an attorney, I would explain all this to the seller. I'd explain how we can mitigate the risks. I can explain how, well, working with the certified agent, we're going to get a market temperature before we start and after, and then once the offers are coming in, we're going to find out what are people saying on the phone, or there's going to be more showings. What is the competition doing? Is it going pending? Is it coming on the market? Or what days on market? What's all this doing? So we can get a market temperature. We can gauge the seller's risks, like how badly do they want to sell this home? Do they need the money, or is the last thing in the world they want is a post-closing lawsuit? Like you're gonna put all this together, talk to the seller, devise a counteroffer strategy, probably bifurcated into 2 contracts: one for the price and terms of the home, one you'll say we're amenable to buyer's agent compensation, but please request it on the forms. You'll provide the forms that are consistent with the seller's risk mitigation strategy. Like, you see why I tried putting this all together. It's all so woven together. It's absolutely dovetails. So the liability traps. Now, start every form in writing. This is just a massive tip. Always do this. Start every transaction with a form that shows 0 buyer agent compensation, because the realtors, I know from going on listing appointments, sellers still know about buyer agent compensation. They don't necessarily all understand the class action suits and what it's done to shift the liability to the seller off the agent and onto the seller. They don't understand that. And that's where the attorney comes in. But they do know they're going to be paying. Realtors talk about it right there. That's going to cause problems if a disgruntled buyer wants to sue. In the past, disgruntled buyers would probably have to pay by the hour to attorneys unless it was very egregious non-disclosures. Now, almost every sale, there might be free money from insurance companies if the realtor's done it wrong. And if they haven't documented 0, but they were talking about it, that realtor's getting both the seller and their brokerage in trouble. So start at 0. Say, yeah, well, we talked about it, but we knew it had to be in 0 and we documented it. Boom. Now, this form is the perfect time for an attorney to talk to their potential sellers about, because on my form, I also talk about the 4 risks, and we talk about why it's important to mitigate them and why you could mitigate it entirely or some. And it really depends on what they feel about their offer at the time. So if a seller is interested in being protected and being able to leverage buyer agent compensation and sell for more, and maybe negotiate buyer agent compensation down, they should be following the attorney process where you bifurcate it, and you can really stay involved and protect the seller by doing the work yourself or working with an attorney broker who will take care of those responsibilities and help them bring in an agent that you're used to working with, an agent that we work with, an agent in the network, or our way, which when I referred clients all over the country for people moving and family and friends, or we can find, I'll just say, I'm going to call I'm going to find out who's doing a lot of work in the area. I'm going to call the couple brokerages. I'm going to find out who's doing the work and who understands what I'm saying. And I'll get them on the phone and we'll talk about it. So there's lots of ways to do that. There's other ways to find great agents too. Like that's the one that I did for family and friends fairly recently. So we go through there. So now you have a seller that understands things. So, in my language, they'd be certified seller. I thought about having a website to train sellers, but we're not there yet. Now, certified agents, this is about how to educate and make sure they're on your team and understand and what we're looking for in an agent. It's not agents who are really good at blowing smoke. It's agents who are really good at making buyers and buyers agents trust the process, because our process is good. And that's what we want. People can bring in offers, encourage offers. And if the clients want, encourage showings or put them all together on that first Saturday. Like, that's what we need out of an agent. We don't need an agent who says, I'm the world's greatest negotiator, because A, they're not, B, they can't. They can't negotiate buyer agent compensation. There's no ability for them to get on the phone and say, I'm representing the seller. Can we talk? They're not, all their forms were removed. They don't even have a form authorizing. That's another thing I'd bring up in the 6 to 10 in getting paid part, 10K or more up to half. I'd say an attorney, you're going to want a form that authorizes you to represent the seller with the buyer's agent when you're negotiating buyer agent compensation. You're going to say, because we bifurcated, we're not really, we haven't rejected the offer, and so we're close on purchase and terms. Now you can get on the phone. If it's not part of one contract, you could actually be locked in here and then get on the phone and discuss the other thing. Agents can't do that anymore. So you want an agent who understands the process, that's going to represent you well. You're the home selling attorney, or you're working with me. We're the home selling attorney team. You're going to do the work, protect your clients, help them sell for more. You're going to get paid. Now, this is a process that I think the first week is the right way to start. Most brokerages, from what I'm understanding, that are run large nationally are not going to let their sellers broadcast buyer agent compensation. And I understand from talking to AIs, there's a lot of memos and forms go around saying they can't even talk or discuss or negotiate buyer agent compensation in various ways. So we have a process that takes care of this. And if we want to work with an agent at a big brokerage, we have a process to take care of that too. And that's why I'll be sharing. Now, the counter language, this is good for a whole course and training by itself, but in short, it's realtors are not licensed. If you look at the Sipper case, they're not licensed to choose between answering on their blank lines on a counteroffer form or bifurcating. So when they choose to write in anything related to buyer agent compensation on those blank lines, I believe they're practicing law without a license, which you would argue, because of the Sipper case, is a criminal violation of the law. So that would be it. Breach of fiduciary duty if they don't discuss the risks, a breach of fiduciary duty if they do something about it. So they're stuck. So, I put videos together, but in the end, you're going to want to choose proper language. Like, are you countering? Or are you saying we're amenable? Are you asking them to have a buyer agent compensation form and a price in terms of the home form? So we'll talk about that. This is a beautiful process. Your seller should be able to sell for more. And if they'd like, negotiate some of the buyer agent compensation down. And then finally, we already talked about 9. So that's an overview. It's nothing new. It's really, the question is, do you want a listing attorney who counsels and works with the seller well? And do you want to be doing some of that work so you can earn $10,000? So those are the only choices. I don't see how an attorney, after they understand all this, could possibly just do straight referrals to a listing agent and say they're going to take care of it. I'm sure you understand. So really, you're going to work with a listing attorney in the area, an attorney broker, and then you can talk to the attorney broker about how you want to get paid and what you want to do, and then, or you're going to do the work yourself. That's really what it is. An attorney needs to be on. What I'm saying is, if your seller is going to be protected and sell for more, there has to be an attorney on the team who's interfacing with the seller. It's not an attorney at the brokerage who advises the realtors. It's someone who, without ideally not having to pay extra, gets to talk to an attorney all throughout the transaction. My name's John McConnon. If you'd like to talk to me, because this is, I did a pretty good job in terms of explaining everything. So at this stage, I'd say, look, if you'd like to find out more, let's have a consult at listingattorney.com. So go to listingattorney.com. On the front page, at least now, there's a form to set up a consult. We'll either respond right away, or our AI will respond and ask what's a good time for you. All right, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.